The kitsune is probably the first Japanese supernatural creature you hear about, but most people don't know just how much lore there is behind the kitsune. Well, prepare to learn about all of it. And did you know China and Korea have their own supernatural foxes? After talking about the kitsune, we'll compare it to the foxes of those two other countries. So kitsune means fox in Japanese. I've seen some people say that it means nine-tailed fox, but those people were sniffing glue. It just means fox. Some foxes are good, others are tricksters and outright evil. In Japanese folklore, there's no difference between normal foxes and supernatural foxes. All foxes become more powerful the longer they live. So the next time you see a fox in the wild, you won't know if it's a harmless creature or one with supernatural powers until it sleeps with you. Kitsune are super lewd. Let's talk about how pervy they are, because that's the kind of channel this is. They love to shapeshift into human form and seduce a man. It's common for a husband to find out that his wife was a fox only after years of marriage. Corrupting Buddhist priests is a favorite hobby of theirs. They have a fetish for the divine. One of the most common types of fox stories is where a fox changes into human form, seduces a traveler, invites him home for a delicious meal on the table and in bed, then disappears the next morning. The man would wake up in the middle of nowhere and realize that he wasn't eating premium sushi and Kobe beef the night before. His food was an appetizing mix of rotting leaves, moss, trash, and poop. Still, you may think that having to eat a bit of poop before spending the night with a kitsune doesn't sound that bad, until you find out that if a kitsune wanted to, it could suck up all of your life energy, leaving only enough for you to live a few more days. And then you would realize that it still doesn't sound that bad. Women aren't safe from these fluffy Japanese succubi either. Like your ex, foxes will sleep with anyone. Stories of foxes lying with women are usually quite assaulty. When a fox sleeps with a man, he always has a good time in the foxhole. When a fox sleeps with a woman, she'd often be in pain and be yelling for help. Foxes are rough in bed, I guess. The woman is usually really sore afterwards in the areas of her body that experienced the most friction. A common remedy was to boil buckwheat in water and apply the liquid to her privates. Some say a fox will tell the victim how to treat the pain afterwards, maybe to make amends for what it did. What a gentleman. Shapeshifting is the power that kitsune are most famous for. Like the tanuki, kitsune can shapeshift into people or objects. Unlike the tanuki, kitsune don't have big ball sacks. A common ritual the fox uses to shapeshift is putting a skull on its head and biting on a bone. It may also cover itself with leaves and face the North Star and bow over 100 times, keeping the skull on its head. After this adorable ritual, the fox would change to a human. Younger, less powerful foxes can only stay in human form for a short time, but older, stronger foxes can stick with their disguise for years. Now, a fox in human form can cause all kinds of trouble. Let me tell you what to look for to prevent yourself from getting seduced by a fox. Half of you degenerates just skipped to the next section, didn't you? Let's say you're at lunch, sitting down in McDonald's, about to swallow a quarter-pounder with cheese when this hot girl walks up. So hot she could boil water and make enough steam to turn a generator and become a source of renewable energy if she wanted to. She sits down next to you, calls herself Eva, and immediately starts hitting on you. Now, how do you know if she's a real woman or a fox? Well, this would never happen to you, so you instantly know she's not real. But let's pretend anyways. The easiest thing to do is to stare at her butt, which you're already doing, so off to a good start. Keep staring intently because sometimes a fox will mess up and its tail will pop out from beneath its clothing. Sometimes you may also see some fur peek out from the collar or sleeves. Check out Eva's jawline because often the imposter's face may be more triangular like a fox. You can look at her reflection on your cup of water. Water always reflects a fox's true form. Listen closely to her words. It's hard for foxes to say certain words, like moshi. They say this is why people in Japan answer phone calls by saying moshi moshi. The practice started because people wanted to make sure the person on the other end wasn't a fox. This is a very popular explanation for the origin of moshi moshi, so I can safely say that it's 100% BS. Another thing you can do is grab a nearby dog and have it sniff Eva. Foxes are terrified of dogs. Dogs can sniff them out. A dog's bark may be enough to scare the fox out of its human skin. One awesome story told of a woman who realized that her lover was a fox when she saw that his manhood looked like a fox's manhood. Good for her, but now I'm concerned about why she was so familiar with fox dicks. What I'm saying is, check Eva's manhood. Another power that Kitsune have is possession. They can invade your body and possess you like a ghost. In ancient times, fox possession was seen as a real disease. A fox can enter your body through the underside of your fingernails or through your breasts. I was having a good day until I discovered that fact, and then I had a great day. So you can guard against possession by wearing gloves or not having breasts. This is why Asian women don't have breasts, for protection. A person possessed by a not-so-powerful fox will act really crazy. They will run around and yell weird things like, "Let me eat tofu." Tofu is one of the fox's favorite foods. But if a really powerful fox possesses someone, it wouldn't be as obvious. The victim would sometimes seem normal and sometimes seem weird, like they would have weird habits. These include eating only food that foxes like, staying away from people, only hanging out with dumber people, not allowing anything to touch their armpits, which doesn't seem that strange, and hiding hair in strange places around the house. They really do all manners of strange things. Supposedly, the victim can hear the fox inside them and can get into fierce internal arguments. Were these cases of fox possession in the old days mostly just cases of mentally ill people? Most likely. Once a fox has taken over someone, how do you exorcise it? There were a lot of supposed treatments that were about as effective as wearing a mask under your nose to protect yourself from a shotgun blast. One treatment was to smear fish paste all over the victim's body and have a dog lick it off. Because foxes are scared of dogs, obviously. People put smelly things like sulfur under the victim's nose to drive the fox away in disgust. Sometimes people burned and beat the victim. Kitsune are masters of illusion. David Blaine is a kitsune. Combined with shape-shifting, they can pull off some really convincing tricks. There are stories of people being under the fox's illusion for years. Fox trickery can be really random. They're like teenagers who suddenly gain superpowers and are just going around doing psycho shit. Some of their tricks are just funny, like making people walk the same 20 steps back and forth, or shaving someone's head. Sometimes you can see a fox moving its tail around, controlling people from afar using its tail. But some of their tricks are totally not cool, like trapping some poor schmuck in an illusion for years, duping people into entering the woods and getting lost forever, or making people go insane. Foxes are known to make these fireballs called kitsunebi, or foxfire. Sometimes when it's dark or when you're in the forest, you may see orbs of light in the distance. These are foxfire lights. Some say foxes can breathe flames or fireballs. Others say they hold animal bones in their mouths and make them glow. They can use the lights to lure people into dangerous places. Sometimes at night, if you're lucky, you may see a long chain of foxfire lights, often miles long, marching in the darkness. This is a fox wedding. They say in the daytime when it's raining but the sun is out, it means a fox wedding parade is happening nearby, where a fox couple just got married and they're celebrating. At nighttime, you can see their orbs of light as they walk, but if you get close, the lights disappear. There have been reports of people finding trails of fox poop and saying that it's evidence of a fox wedding. It's also evidence that foxes are rude little buggers who poops on the floor in the middle of a wedding. So, how do you know if you're currently trapped in a fox illusion? You could try pinching yourself. If you don't feel pain, you're probably in an illusion. You could also, if you have a fried rat handy, throw the fried rat on the ground. Foxes love fried rat and will drop its illusion to jump on that mouth-watering hunk of crispy rat meat. One really cool way to see a kitsune for what it really is by using the fox window. You do this hand gesture to make a little window with your fingers and look through it. You'll find out right away if that cute girl coming on to you is actually a fox or a disappointment. Now, one of the most disturbing powers of the kitsune is possession. It's called kitsunetsuki, or fox possession. We actually have real-life cases of this. Yeah, that's right. Now, I think I know what was happening, but I'll tell you after we hear about them. In 1892, a Dr. Shimamura visited Shimane Prefecture, a place where there were many reports of people being possessed by foxes. He was hoping to be the Charles Darwin of fox possession research. He found 34 people who the locals claimed were possessed. Many of the strange stories in this video were written down by Dr. Shimamura. These weren't just folk stories people told around the campfire, okay? They weren't made up stories you heard from your sister's husband's mistress or something. No, these were written down by doctors or newspapers. Now, you may think that only a few superstitious people believed in fox possession, but no. For most of Japanese history, people saw it as a real disease, like smallpox or measles. It became the go-to explanation for people with mental illness. Now, you also may think that only people in Japan's medieval era believed this, not people in modern times. No, you idiot wanker. Also people in modern times. In fact, the cases in this video were recorded after Japan's medieval period. Let's start small with the tamer cases first, and work our way up to stranger and stranger cases until we reach the climax of a very hard and serious case. There was a fox-possessed man who was obsessed with hair. This man couldn't sleep at night, and it got so bad that he tried to commit suicide. He didn't allow anyone to come near him when he ate. He liked to hang around people who were dumber than him. But the weirdest thing was that he had a habit of collecting hair. They may have been his own hair or even other people's, but he would collect them in the sleeve of his kimono. One day, someone picked up a pail that was lying on the ground and discovered underneath it hair. A lot of it. He had been hiding hair under the pail. It's not clear why, but people thought he was hiding his fox fur. Another one of Dr. Shimamura's patients was a lady who had a fox in her head and stomach. This woman attacked a child because she thought there was a dog in the kid's stomach. After that, she stopped eating, drinking, or even talking to others. She always had this sinister smile on her face and talked to herself in a low voice. The woman told doctors that a fox possessed her body. She could hear its voice coming from her head and stomach. It was sucking her blood. Apparently, she got this idea in her head when she heard a rumor that a sorcerer was using foxes in some magical rituals. Luckily, she came to her senses and left the hospital cured and feeling very stupid. In the mid-1700s, a possessed man drew a picture of a fox and wrote in perfect calligraphy that he dedicated it to the great god Inari, the god of rice and agriculture. Inari's messengers were said to be foxes. At first, this doesn't seem strange until you discover that the man was illiterate. He could only write while possessed. This piece of writing still survives until today in the hands of one Shinshi Kadawaki, passed down to him by his ancestors. Unfortunately, even though the writing definitely exists, we can't be sure that this event actually happened, or it was just a story started by some drunk uncle to impress his niece that he wanted to marry. And then there was the guy who cut off his hand. That's right, he did. It's all fun and games until someone cuts off his hand. The man was paranoid and kept repeating that he was the victim of a fox. There were rumors at the time that people in a nearby village went insane or died from fox possession. He was a hard worker, often going deep into the mountain to cut down trees. But one day he stayed too long in the heat and got caught in a thunderstorm. Sickness overcame him and he went to lie down. The next thing he knew, he awoke 30 days later, missing a hand. He had forgotten the last 30 days, but his family didn't. Because he got sick after spending time in the mountains, his family actually did fear that he was possessed by foxes. They watched him day and night. Strangely, they found short white hairs on his bedding and clothes, signs of a white fox. The man gradually grew violent, attacking friends and family. His family had to hide anything sharp from him. One day, he declared that he regretted hurting the people around him, and before anyone could stop him, the man took a hatchet and cut off his own hand. The doctors were stumped. They could not cure his missing hand, but they did manage to cure him of fox paranoia. Then there was the case of a man who tried to commit ritual suicide. He claimed that he could not speak, and all words that came out of his mouth were the fox's words. He felt the fox running all over the inside of his body. Sometimes he himself ran on all fours, making fox sounds. He became obsessed with hurting the fox, so he stuck his hand into a fire. But that wasn't enough. He took a knife and stabbed his belly, intending to commit ritual suicide. Luckily, he failed and the doctors saved him. Unfortunately, the man left the hospital still believing he was possessed. This next case about fox exorcism was reported in a newspaper in 1926. A woman had been acting crazy for a long time, so her brother and daughter decided to help her. They rubbed sulfur on her nose and eyes, hoping the smell would encourage the fox to get out of there. They also did this to the woman's mother, who also had mental issues. Apparently, they used just a tad bit way too much sulfur, and both women died. Afterwards, the brother and daughter called the police and turned themselves in. Sometime in the early 1900s, a sorcerer was called in to heal a mad woman. When he got there, this expert sorcerer concluded that she was possessed by a fox. Great, because that was his specialty. He tried starving the poor woman and rubbed pepper on her nose, eyes, and mouth to irritate the fox out. When that failed, he placed some metal tongs in fire until they became red hot and burned her body with it. He stabbed holes in the woman's breasts and belly. After 3 days of torture, she died. Cases of fox possession happened in Japan more than in any other country. Why is that? And why did these people act like foxes? It's pretty simple, really. Most of these people suffered from mental illness, and because the public was superstitious and Japan has a thing for foxes, they labeled those people as being possessed by foxes. And when everyone brands you that way, you're more likely to believe them and start acting more fox-like. In areas of Japan where people had strong superstitions about other animals, like wolves or dogs, they blamed it on wolves or dogs instead. Now, the Japanese weren't the only ones with supernatural foxes. Since ancient times, Asian fox spirits have been a major part of the culture of Japanese, Korean, and Chinese furry communities, and a major part of the larger culture in these countries as well. Yes, other Asian cultures have fox beliefs too, but you can do a video about them. This video is about the differences between the fox spirits of Japan, Korea, and China. In Japan, they're called Kitsune. In Korea, they're called Gumiho or Kumiho, and in China, Hulijing. So let's start this video about the differences between fox creatures by talking about similarities. All three cultures have similar beliefs about the supernatural fox, especially nowadays when the world is so connected. Everyone's absorbing ideas and beliefs from other cultures. One thing you gotta keep in mind is that folklore is not an exact science. Not only can beliefs be influenced by other cultures, you can often find stories that go against very popular beliefs. There are exceptions to every folklore rule. Traditionally, fox spirits are tricksters, and they use their powers to help them trick humans. The main thing fox spirits are known for is that they can shapeshift into beautiful women to seduce men. This theme makes up probably 80% of stories about foxes, and 100% of stories about foxes in fanfics. And often, the reason they seduce men is to suck their life energy, to gain powers, or even become immortal. Sex is a big theme. If there's a fox in a story, it's probably trying to loosen some unlucky guy's pants. The idea of the shape-shifting fox spirits likely originated from that big brother that no one asked for, China. It then spread to Korea and Japan, although ancient Japan did seem to have native fox beliefs, so maybe native ideas and Chinese ideas combined to create the kitsune that we all know and love, sometimes way too much. Let's talk about the nature of fox spirits, because it's different for each culture. The Japanese fox spirit is called the kitsune. Kitsune just means fox in Japanese. So in Japan, unlike in Korea and China, there's no difference between the normal fox and the supernatural fox with powers. A normal fox just gains more power over time. A kitsune can be evil or good. Sometimes a kitsune would transform into a woman, not to trick a man, but to become a loving wife. There's a special type of kitsune who are messengers of Inari, the god of rice and agriculture. These kitsune are always benevolent. In Korea, the Gumiho or Kumiho is a supernatural fox, different from normal foxes. Gumiho means nine-tailed fox in Korean. When a normal fox lives long enough, it turns into a Gumiho. Some say it takes 100 years for this to happen, some say it takes 1,000 years, and some even say it takes the amount of time the US takes to finish counting ballots in a national election. The Gumiho is pretty much always evil and always female. There is only one traditional story of a Gumiho that's a male. See how there are exceptions to every folklore rule? The Korean word for fox is yowu, which is also a negative word used to call someone a scheming woman. In China, the Hulijing is also a supernatural fox. It means fox spirit. Like the gumiho, when a normal fox lives long enough, it becomes a hulijing. A hulijing can be either good or evil, although it's usually evil in stories, and usually female. Traditionally, the hulijing is a special being that lies somewhere between humans and gods, or humans and demons. Today, the Chinese call women who seduce married men hulijing, like a homewrecker or a woman who uses her beauty for evil deeds. So, if you're a woman and think it'd be cool to tattoo some Chinese characters on your lower back, don't use hulijing. Anytime you want to get a tattoo of words from a foreign language, I suggest doing extensive research on the internet, ask someone who knows the language, and then just forget about the whole thing. Tails are a sign of power. You can tell if a fox is normal or supernatural by counting its tails. If you stop counting at the same time that you started, it's a normal fox. A kitsune can have up to 9 tails. It grows a tail every 100 years. A 9-tailed fox is 1,000 years old. Now, the expert counters among us may be saying, wait, if it takes 100 years per tail, a 9-tailed fox would be 800 years old, not 1,000. You're correct, Pythagoras. It doesn't make sense. So either the 100 years per tail number is just an estimate, or the saying that a 9-tailed fox is 1,000 years old may not be literal. It may have just meant really old. For example, you may say to a friend, that's your new boyfriend? He's like 1,000 years old. The gumiho has exactly 9 tails. It's in the name. And the hulijing is usually depicted with 9 tails, but the old stories actually say that it can have anywhere from 1 to 1,000 tails. So you know it gets the best sleep. Let's talk about powers. All of the foxes have the power to shapeshift into human form. A kitsune can transform into men or women, even objects. In China, when a normal fox reaches 50 years old, it can shapeshift into a woman. At 100 years, it can shapeshift into a beautiful woman, or shaman, or even a man. There's a belief that male Buddhist monks and priests can see through a hulijing's disguise. Some say when a hulijing turns 1,000 years old, it rises to heaven and turns into a powerful, golden, 9-tailed celestial fox. For all foxes, their transformations are not perfect. They usually have some part of them that's foxy, like a sharp jawline or squinty eyes. Sometimes they screw up and a tail pops out. Dogs may be able to smell their foxiness. They can make visions to fool your eyes and can even possess you. Possessions usually drive the victim insane. In the hulijing's case, the madness can be passed on for generations. Foxes can suck you dry, your energy, that is. As the energy flows from your body into theirs, they level up their power and wisdom. Do enough of these flow jobs, and they can even gain immortality. Now, kitsune stories don't usually focus on this energy-sucking business. They usually focus more on the trickster aspect. The kitsune loves to play tricks on people, sometimes for evil, but sometimes just for the lulz. Writers for gumiho and hulijing stories did love energy-sucking, though. It seems for the gumiho and hulijing, the purpose of all the shape-shifting and trickery was not for fun, but for power. The gumiho stores the life energy of its victims in this round ball that it keeps in its mouth. Store enough energy, and it gains immortality. In one story, a gumiho tries to drain a schoolboy's life energy by shape-shifting into a girl and rolling her energy ball back and forth between his mouth and hers in the second most awkward French kiss ever. Only beaten by my first French kiss, where I slobbered on her nose and we had to wipe ourselves off afterwards. And then we kissed. Unfortunately for the gumiho, the boy swallows the energy ball mid-snog. It releases a stream of vast knowledge into his head, making him super smart. And then he gets the village to hunt down the gumiho and kill her. In some stories, instead of sucking energy, the gumiho eats the victim's organs, like the heart or the liver. It may even dig up bodies from graves to find a tasty heart to munch on. Some people say that if a gumiho refrains from killing or eating humans for 1,000 days, it can become human and lose its evil ways. The hulijing is kind of like a succubus in that it drains energy through sex. It can also store the energy in a ball and carry the ball in its mouth, like the gumiho, or on the tip of its tail. What's special about the hulijing is that it can use its ball to heal the sick. Friendly hulijing have been known to sacrifice their lives to heal people. And now for a bunch of random info. In the popular story of the 9-tailed fox named Tamamo no Mae, she seduced a Japanese emperor for years. He was head over heels in love with her, but he almost uwooed his way to an early grave because she was draining his life energy for years. But she was not always a beautiful woman. In one old version of the story, Tamamo no Mai was a 42-foot tall man. Just goes to show again how folklore is not an exact science. The Kisune's favorite food is aburage, or fried tofu. The Hulijing's favorite food is eggs, and the Linfamy's favorite food is pho. The Hulijing were thought to be night animals and live in cemeteries. Both Hulijing and Kisune were said to live in old, abandoned buildings. One of my favorite random facts comes from an old Chinese book that tells us that foxes like menstrual blood. They would find where women throw away their soiled rags every month and lick the blood from the rags. The writer then makes an educated guess that this is why foxes turn into monsters. There's something called kitsune mochi. Sounds delightful, right? Like a delicious snack. But it's totally the opposite. It means fox owner. Some families were thought to have owned foxes. People stayed away from them because they were afraid of being attacked by fox spirits, and people definitely didn't want to marry into fox-owning families for fear that the foxes would spread within their household. It was a fantastic way to exclude people in the village who didn't fit in. Now, as interesting as the kitsune might be, my favorite Japanese supernatural creature is not the fox, but the tanuki, the raccoon dog with the magical shape-shifting ballsack. Click here to hear all about why balls are magical. We have some new members on Patreon and YouTube today. Fiona C9, Deborah Su Choi, Caitlin Elizabeth, and Acha Rek. Right back at ya. Thanks so much, you guys. All right, I love you, and spread the knowledge.